Hey everybody, happy Tuesday and welcome back to the stream. I hope everybody is having a fantastic day. We have had a little bit of a rough 48 hours RUFF in our house. Miss Libby is in the cone of shame. Oh, baby. It's okay. She had a really bad cyst on her leg that ruptured and got infected, and it's not her fault. It just happened. So my sweet baby needs surgery, but she had to go to the vet all day yesterday while they cleared out her infection, and she is not in the best spirits. So if you love my dog, please keep her in your thoughts and in your quick healing prayers so that she can get this horrible thing taken off. She hates it so much, and she can't play, and she can't run around, and it's hard for her to eat, so she's a little glum today. I know, I hear your little barks. I too am glum for you. But we had a pretty crazy day yesterday. Just as a reminder, our streams for yesterday and today are pre-recorded, but I decided to scrap our pre-recorded stream that I was going to do today, and I'm pre-recording this morning, so you're going to see this afternoon, because something pretty big happened yesterday that I want us to talk about and I think is really important for us to unpack, and that is that our YouTube channel got a strike on it yesterday, falsely. We think it was picked up by an automated system, but we were informed yesterday morning that our YouTube channel was not going to be able to stream for a week or upload any new videos for a week because of a conversation that we had last week on the stream about a biotech startup company called Conception taking blood cells and turning those stem cells that they've harvested from the blood into human eggs and bypassing the entire process of human reproduction. We talked a lot about the bioethical implications of that and what that would mean for society at large as we continue to see repeats of the same conversation really happening in replacing reproduction entirely, not just through IVF anymore, but through literally growing human eggs, like the precursors to a zygote that otherwise never would have existed in a natural conception standpoint. And when we couple that with the rise of AI and particularly the rise of like artificial womb facilities and all of that, it's a really dystopian reality for us to confront. So we unpacked a lot of the biotech implications and the bioethics implications of all of that from Conception's own website. And we're informed that we got a strike on YouTube for violating the policy on vaccines that are currently approved by the World Health Organization, which I think is pretty interesting, to be honest with you. That is a new idea. We've always steered clear of talking about that on the stream. We have realized that a lot of these platforms do have community guidelines violations and restrictions that will get you kicked off. It will get you deplatformed. And we have made the conscious choice with all of my content and all of you guys as the community of this content, that it's more important for us to be present on every single platform than to talk about certain subjects that we know are going to get us deplatformed, because we have to go reach the people that otherwise would never see our content, right? We don't want to operate in an echo chamber or in a bubble. And we think that this video got flagged for the wrong reasons, picked up by AI, which does a lot of content moderation, but they reviewed it, and 7 or 8 hours later, our channel was reinstated. So thank you, YouTube, for taking a bigger look at this and having a human being put eyes on it and realize that it didn't actually violate any of the community guidelines. We really appreciate that. And we will continue doing our part to follow all of the community guidelines here on the platform, which we are live on right now. Thank goodness that we can be streaming this week. But I thought it was just interesting for us to unpack a little bit, because community guidelines, violations, and strikes, and all of these things are a big piece of conversation in the political world that I spend some time working in, but just generally speaking are a huge hurdle for independent creators to overcome. And if you are not tied with your name under the umbrella of a massive media corporation, when you deal with these strikes, or you deal with your account getting banned, like I've had to deal with on TikTok many, many times, or your account being permanently, or not permanently, but temporarily suspended, like we've dealt with on Twitter many, many times, when you're just one person rather than a massive media corporation and a massive media conglomerate that has millions of dollars and a whole team running a show for you and somebody who helps you with your social media, you don't have somebody that can go to bat for you. And it's literally just you against massive, gigantic, big tech conglomerates that otherwise probably just don't have the time of day for you, right? And you have to go through these appeal processes on their website, and it becomes really difficult, and it really makes you appreciate that you do have the autonomy to say whatever you want as an independent creator. Nobody owns your content. Nobody owns your name, image, and likeness, but it is a lot harder to grow, and you're constantly under scrutinization that other companies don't have to be under with the magnifying glass, because they have a strong relationship with these platforms and know who to pick up the phone and call if something like this happens. So I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday named Ian Haworth, who many of you probably know, who's also an independent content creator originally from the UK, but now he lives here in America, has for the last, I think, 7-8 years now or so, and used to work for Facebook, amazingly, in content moderation, eventually became a freelance writer and still does a lot of freelance writing, but worked for the Daily Wire and was on their morning show podcast, The Morning Wire, for a very long time, and then decided to go into independent content creation not that long ago, a lot like what I do, with his own content and his own mediums to put things out there rather than being owned by a media company. We love Ian. I've known Ian for a very, very long time, but I was messaging back and forth with Ian yesterday, and we were both remarking on how uniquely difficult it is for independent creators to overcome the hurdle of censorship that does sometimes exist, and overcome the hurdle of these guideline violations that are or are not fair. In this case, was not fair, right? And they did their part, and they took it away and took the strike off of our channel and everything. Thank goodness. We're very grateful for that. I want to be very adamantly clear about that. But when you're just one person against what seems like the world, the universe, the metaverse, which is even more intimidating, it can be really, really frustrating rather than having somebody pick up the phone and call. So I asked Ian to come on the stream today to just share with us a few of his thoughts about how content moderation works, about what these companies are doing through AI, what they're doing through human beings to censor certain content or flag certain content as against their community guidelines, and where we want to see all of these things going forward. I sat down with Ian just a few minutes ago to record an interview, and the second half of our interview, the audio got corrupted somehow in our video processing, which I absolutely hate. I'm so sorry about that, but I was able to salvage about 15 minutes of a really fantastic conversation with Ian about how this content moderation works. He knows, because this used to be his job while working at Facebook before he became a creator himself. And so wanting to unpack a little bit about what happens when things are flagged for community guidelines, and more importantly, who is doing that? Is it an automation tool, AI? Is it a human being? And which one matters? Which one are we more afraid of? And which one is going to be the prevalent norm moving forward? So again, his audio sounds pretty wonky throughout all of this. I don't know what happened with our audio processing. When we have guests on, sometimes things happen, and he's a very busy person, so we didn't want to repeat the interview this time around, but we are going to have him back on very soon to talk about independent content creation. And I thought that was really important to just share what we did get with you guys, because he is just absolutely phenomenal. And before we do that, I do want to jump in really quick and say a big, big, big thank you to our sponsor of today's stream, and that is Public Square. You guys probably saw last week Public Square went public as a company. They are trading with the NYSE as PSQH. That's their acronym, and are doing phenomenally. I'm so excited to see shareholders take an interest in what Public Square is doing. You guys might remember, if you've been around here for a long time, that I've been working with Public Square since I did Outdated as a podcast like 2 years ago. Was that really 2 years ago? About a year and a half ago. And then they were a tiny company. They were based in California. They were only working with companies in Southern California to create this network of pro-life, pro-family, and pro-freedom businesses. Now, obviously, they are a publicly traded company. There are more than 55,000 small businesses on the platform that are all reliably pro-life, pro-family, and pro-freedom. Everything from coffee companies to dog food to someone to help you do your taxes to personal trainers and everything in between. If you are a small business owner, you need to be adding your business to Public Square, and I will drop the link right now in the live chat for how you can do that. But more importantly, if you are looking for small businesses to support either in your area or around the country that you know share your values, you can check it out at publicsq.com or download Public Square, Public SQ on the App Store and on the Google Play Store if you have an Android. International users, I know we have a lot of you guys. Don't worry. The international waitlist is filling up with Public Square, and they are going international very, very soon, as well as rolling out e-commerce inside of the app very, very soon. So super exciting stuff. I know, my little cone baby. So I feel terrible. I hate that this interview that was pre-recorded has such wonky audio. He's a little hard to hear at times, but Ian is absolutely brilliant, and I thought it was so important for us to have this conversation today when we got our channel reinstated, when we can continue to make this a timely discussion. So bear with me. I'll be hanging out in the chat with you guys, even though the audio is a little wonky, to answer any questions that you might have about what Ian is saying. And I'm very, very excited to welcome my friend, my colleague, somebody that I look up to greatly and very much admire, Ian Haworth, into the stream. Ian, thank you so much for joining us on the stream today. You and I have been friends for several years now and originally crossed paths doing some work with the Daily Wire out of Nashville, Tennessee. But like me, you are an independent creator now, and would love for you, if people don't already know much about your story, to just introduce yourself and a little bit about your background as a creator for our stream.
Sure, thanks for having me, Isabel. So I kind of did the learn to code thing backwards. My story is super random. I moved to the US to work in tech. I worked in tech for just over 8 years. The last 4 of those, I worked for Facebook. I worked on a bunch of different teams for them as a software engineer. The last one was actually their content moderation fact-checking team. So that was kind of cool. Now moving into the political space, actually talk about that a little more. But in 2018, things in the Bay Area went just crazy, absolutely crazy. Like Brett Kavanaugh was in the news. We had female coworkers walking out of meetings saying they couldn't be around other men.
Wait, seriously?
Oh yeah, that happened. Interesting, but this is happening. This is for real.
Wow.
And the election just kind of threw everything into a just overdrive. I'm also Jewish, so seeing a lot of the rise in anti-Semitism on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Around 2018, but earlier, kind of sparked me just to start talking from a perspective of, yeah, I'm a conservative, but I have a different perspective on all the things. Especially being British, coming to American conservatism later in life than a lot of people. And it kind of snowballed from there. So I started doing just op-eds, worked for the Daily Wire for a while. And now, as you mentioned, just independent creators, putting out videos, writing for a bunch of different outlets, trying to just make a difference in my own personal way and trying to raise what I think are important issues rather than just putting out clickbait. So it's
It is, and I think avoiding the clickbait is something that we do around here too a lot, and it's very tempting to make a own the libs, like viral 15-second video that's going to get a lot of attention very quickly, and it takes a lot longer to build a following and build better engagement when you're trying to have honest, real, authentic conversation. But I think people are just so hungry for it right now, especially in a time where there are very few genuinely independent creators in this right of center. I wouldn't even say political space anymore, because generally we don't really talk about politics these days. I think, paying attention to a lot of your content and mine, we're talking a lot more about cultural issues that we're facing in America. So cultural, right of center, conservative space, I guess there's not a lot of independent creation, but I have loved seeing your story transform, and love that you have sort of a roundabout on the back end of social media perspective on what you do now. As you know, you reached out to me yesterday after this happened. Yesterday, my YouTube channel got a strike, which was my first ever strike. I've never experienced anything like that. I know, it feels so good. It's like losing my Antifa virginity, which I did on campus a few months ago. So exciting stuff. I'm very happy. But I've been so diligent, especially as someone who is totally independent with her channel. I don't have a multi-zillion dollar budget from a major media corporation getting millions of subscribers every year. Like, I just don't have that, right? And so I've been trying to build that really, really slowly, and it takes a lot longer, and you have to be a lot more careful when you don't have this huge army to go to bat for you. But have been really diligent about not violating, especially their medical misinformation policy, because I saw so many friends' channels and professional channels get demonetized from that or taken off the air or whatever. And so I ended up streaming last week about this new biotech startup company in San Francisco that's taking stem cells and turning them into human egg cells and just like bypassing all of human reproduction, which is insane. And read off of this company's website, talked about the greater bioethical implications of that and why human reproduction in a natural sense still really matters, and got a strike for violating the vaccine misinformation policy, even though I never used the word vaccine. Pretty quickly, within a matter of like 7-8 hours, they ended up rescinding the strike. It's taken off my channel now. But it really got me thinking about the automation tools and the people behind the screens that are making these decisions to give especially growing creators, because they might be threatened by that, strikes. And you have experience with that. So for somebody that just has no idea how this process works, if they're not a creator, if they're generally confused when people say, you know, there seems to be some informational bias or some opinion-based bias in censoring people on the internet, can you just walk us through what that process looks like, and what are we missing when it comes to that sneaky suspicion feeling, but kind of knowing what's going on behind the curtain?
Yeah, I think the main thing here to begin with is it's a very, very complicated system. So there's usually two different paths content moderation goes down. It's either in person or automated. And both have huge issues. We're going to be moving more in the direction of automated for the reason that it's far cheaper for these companies, especially with the layoffs going on. Quite usually content moderators are the ones that get kicked off the bus first, because their jobs can be replicated to some extent by AI. We're going to see that a lot more on things like Twitter, Facebook. It's just, that's the direction things are going. So on the in-person side, we'll have a lot of content that's either flagged by users or flagged by really kind of automatic systems that might catch keywords or key images. And then it'll go in front of the person and they'll click yes or no, essentially. If you're a big content creator, then you usually have a team at all of these companies. So if you're, like, say, big on Facebook, quite often you have someone you can actually email on Facebook. You get a flag on something, you say, hey, this is wrong. They'll immediately take it off within hours. The issue, as you kind of alluded to, is that if you're a sort of smaller content creator, you don't have those resources. So then you have to question it through a system where a lot of it's automated too. So my interesting story that I'm still shadow banned by Facebook. No one is actually being shown my content on Facebook. I have not a huge following. I think it's some 30,000 to 40,000 followers or so. So not huge, but like not tiny. I get 1 or 2 likes on posts that 100 people see post at most. So it's obviously being suppressed. It's being suppressed because I shared the New York Times crossword that looked like a swastika, saying, this looks like a swastika.
I remember when that happened and immediately noticed your engagement falling off. Do you think that was automated, or was that a person?
It was automated.
Okay.
So I tried, because I used to work at Facebook, I kind of took it with a grain of salt. Gave them a bit of leeway and said, like, hey, look, I emailed them. I know this is a mistake. Like, it looks like a swastika. I understand you suppressing swastikas. I don't necessarily agree with that on free speech terms, but like, that's your policy, fine. But me sharing the New York Times crossword
to call it out,
and also, like, I'm Jewish. I'm not sharing swastikas left and right.
Shocking. Yeah.
You heard it here first.
What does that look like then once it gets flagged by a person? It goes through this automated system. I'm assuming there's like keywords or image-based things that AI picks up on. And then ultimately it has to get reviewed by a person, or can it stay automated the whole time?
Sometimes it can stay automated the whole time.
Wow, okay.
I think it varies by company. I don't know how it works at YouTube and even Facebook. They change their policies quite often depending on who's able to actually view it. And then fact checking is a whole other segment. So I'm going to put that to the side. We can talk about that later. But in terms of the content and moderation side, so much of it is automated. And the people who build these systems, it matters what the keywords are. It matters what the key images are. It matters what data you feed it. That's why quite often it feels like there's a bias, because there is a bias. A lot of the people making these policies are left-wing. They're openly left-wing. I always thought whenever you talk about big tech companies, the CEO is not the issue. The engineers are not the issue. It is the rotten core of the company that are policy positions. Measures. All of these people making the actual core decisions on what content is and isn't allowed. You look at LinkedIn, they're all ex-Democratic Party operatives. The communications director at Facebook who announced the New York Post story about Hunter Biden was being suppressed, he worked for a ton of different Democrats. Like, it's pretty open what they're doing.
I'm really glad you brought that up because I think especially within the lens of a new era of social media, in a way, people are assuming that a change of leadership means a change of policies on the platform. And that's not necessarily true. I think, I'm referring to Twitter and or X. I don't know what we're calling it now, to be honest with you. I hate the rebrand. If any of you are listening to this, please, for the love of all that is good, go back to the bird because we don't understand the X thing. But I think people falsely assume that a lot, right? And I get told all the time that the most evil platforms and the most difficult platforms to be on, especially as an open conservative, would of course have to be TikTok or Instagram, which ironically are where I'm growing the fastest and reaching the most people because I think there's a hunger for that type of content. Whereas the only platform I ever see open pornography without ever searching for it is Twitter. The only platform where I've ever had my account locked out, and I know you've had issues with this, is Twitter or X or whatever we're going to call it now. And it's probably because a lot of those content moderation operatives and the AI system there does still have a substantial bias, even if the new ownership claims to value free speech and free expression on the internet. And they just announced, as they're transitioning Twitter to X and making this like umbrella content platform, I'm not even really sure what all they're trying to include, but they're saying like broadcast news and keeping the other stuff and a whole host of new stuff, I think really in an effort to compete with Meta, that the entire platform, my dog wants to weigh in on this too if you're hearing her bark, that the entire platform is going to be run by AI. And I am extremely concerned about that. We talk about AI here on the stream a lot within the context of dating, within the context of replacing our jobs, with the UN summit that they just hosted a few weeks ago, but particularly in the realm of content moderation, at least when there's a mistake, because one of those buzzwords is flagged, even if you're calling something out or trying to bring truth to light, you have somebody with a soul reviewing it, right? They can have a sense of humanity there and understand the bigger picture, but I don't know that AI can. Is that something that concerns you? Do we think this is coming to other platforms? What does the future of that look like?
Yeah, I think it's going to come to other platforms to some extent. I think Twitter, they're obviously leaning very heavily into this. I think that's a big reason of why Elon Musk bought the company in the first place, because in terms of data scraping, like AI is only as good as the data you feed it.
Oh, yeah.
Artificial intelligence really just relies on the models and the data you've given it. And Twitter is a massive trove of data. That's why he was so mad that Meta was allegedly scraping their data right before they released Threads, for example. Because there's a huge trove of data that's provided there. My issue with AI is that no one can really, it's too much of an umbrella term to really understand what it means. It doesn't mean just making cool images online, or does it mean that we're actually creating intelligent controls of military systems, of scientific systems, of medical systems. The content moderation, I think, is one very small piece of that pie, but it's all concerning because the bigger separation we have between content and people understand context in a way that a lot of these machines simply don't.
Yeah.
A lot of AI systems seem very creative, like you see a lot of the images created of like presidents if they were wrestlers, things like that. It's pretty cool. They're still not a human. They cannot make those distinctions between what is a swastika, what is a crossword puzzle.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about free speech online, which is Elon Musk's whole thing, that's been my criticism of him from the beginning. I thought it was great that he bought Twitter, but if he sells it to the public on a free speech platform and then charges people for it and all those kind of things, it has to be free speech. When you're introducing AI to that extent, I do not believe that is going to maintain that system. The porn issue you raised, because I see porn left, right, and center without you search the most innocuous thing on.
It's outrageous.
Will be porn.
Literally, the other day, I searched Colorado because I was home with my family and just wanted to know what was going on in the news. And first result was just violent pornography. So there's something that has to be done about Twitter's content moderation there, because how you can lock someone out for calling out leftist insane stories about child gender transition or any other major subject falsely, right? Oops, it was a mistake. Our AI system did that. We saw that with Michael Knowles a few weeks ago. And yet still allow violent pornography on the site claiming free speech. Very bizarre to me. Do you think? Go ahead.
The one thing as well is people quite often, they say, oh, how can you not handle child pornography? The problem is that's actually very, very hard to do with automation, because you don't know someone's age, for example. If you are allowing certain sexualized content and not others, how do you work out the age of the person?
Yeah.
You need human beings involved because that's how you report. There's been several cases I've read about people reporting child porn or say underage porn, like 15, 16-year-olds, for example.
Oh my gosh.
Being posted without their consent. But the moment there's not a third to actually verify that, what do you do? And so it's a much harder problem than I think people realize. It's not just a matter of turning porn off on Twitter. Like, we need people involved, and the more people that are not involved, the harder this is going to be to solve.
So I like the way that you put that, because I think for a lot of right-of-center individuals that are frustrated with the overwhelming left-wing bias of the people working on these teams, they might falsely assume AI is a better solution, right? If something is more automated, it can remove political bias or it can remove cultural bias and more clearly define what is and isn't allowed on these platforms, at least within the jurisdiction that we're dealing with right now, right? Knowing that we don't really have free speech on these platforms. We have to follow the terms and conditions or the content policies or whatever. But I actually wonder if having a person, even somebody who would vehemently disagree with me on everything and would call me like a violent extremist for all the things that I'm saying, is still preferable, because at least there's that connection of humanity. Would you rather be reviewed by a lot of your former coworkers at Facebook that you know their political leanings rather than a machine?
I think yes, because a lot of the people I actually worked with, I was openly conservative at the time. I was writing for the Daily Wire and some other outlets while working at Facebook. All of my coworkers were fine with it. Like, we'd have great discussions over meals, all that kind of thing. So I think the bias isn't actually as bad as people think.
Yeah.
Everyone disagreed with me. Everyone thought I was ridiculous and wrong. They respected my position. And they also respected Facebook for being what should be an open platform for discussion. They were just as angry as everyone else when the New York Post story was suppressed. Undermined a lot of the actual good work. So, like, if we pivot over to fact checking, for example, I think fact checking in theory is good. Right? Facts are good. Being able to distinguish between true and untrue things on the internet is a good tool for people to have. The problem is if the fact checkers only care about one side of the political aisle and are using ridiculous things like misleading or partly true, partly false, they're enforcing their own bias. And that's where the issue comes. But they don't work for Facebook. They're all third party.
True.
And so a lot of these companies don't actually want to deal with this problem, so they outsource it. They outsource it to companies that are ex-CNN operatives or ex-Democratic Party operatives who see themselves as an activist rather than a journalist. And then the big tech companies can kind of just wipe their hands of the issue. Everyone gets angry at the fact checkers. They ignore the big tech companies. Meanwhile, individual private users or sort of mid-level creators like you and me, rather than the big companies, the people who don't have a strong team behind them to actually push back against this, suffer the consequences. So there's so many layers to this, and I think people oversimplify the problem we're facing, and just saying something is a free speech platform, saying AI is going to handle it.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned. This is simply not going to happen.
Again, you guys, I hate that interview got cut pretty short. Unfortunately, we talked for about 40 minutes and we only were able to salvage about 15 minutes because the audio files went super wonky. So I hate that. But Ian is such an expert on the subject of content moderation. He is such a phenomenally brilliant individual and has so much integrity, and it very much is reinstituting morality in the world of content creation, especially in the conservative political space, that I'm not seeing from a lot of other content creators. So please check out Ian Haworth all across social media. You can find him IG Haworth, HAWORTH, and his show Off Limits, which is kind of like our stream, is coming back very, very soon to video platforms. I'm sorry, I'm trying so hard not to laugh, but Libby is so upset with her cone of shame. It's okay, Libby. Everything's gonna be okay. I need to go take care of my dog, so I'm gonna sign it off here, but want to let you know that no matter what comes at our way, no matter what is thrown at us when it comes to a content moderation perspective, or when it comes to how we are going to keep combating censorship in the world of obvious bias and a truthless world, we are never going to stop fighting. I have had my TikTok account permanently deleted 7 or 8 times, and it always has come back from the dead. I call it the Lazarus of TikTok accounts because we were telling the truth. My Twitter account has been suspended more times than I can possibly imagine because we've been telling the truth. And whether these strikes or temporary or permanent suspensions and bans are legitimate and are fair or are not. And we work really hard to get those things reinstated. Telling the truth is the most important thing. And it is a huge risk. It's really difficult as an independent content creator to have your livelihood threatened when you are banned or suspended or whatever on any of these platforms, because you don't have a fallback. You don't have another channel. You don't have another stream of income. And I want you to know that truly, you guys might not think it makes much of a difference, but when you are here on this platform, on YouTube, or on any of the other platforms that we are streaming on Rumble, on Getter, on Locals, on Facebook, when you watch, when you hit the subscribe or follow button, when you donate in our super chats, when you support us in our Locals community, all of those things help make us bring more Gen Zers along on this journey, bring more people alongside of us on this journey of seeking truth in a truthless world. And that's not always going to be easy. We talk about it all the time through a religious lens and through a religious perspective, but we're not promised the open acceptance of this world. We're not promised that we're going to have ultimate adoration and people wanting to agree with us all the time. In fact, we're promised that if we share truth, which I believe is the truth of Jesus Christ, objective truth from the universe, we're going to be hated. We're going to be cast aside. We're going to be persecuted. We might get banned. We might have to deal with censorship. We might deal with slow growing channels that just doesn't make any sense why everybody else is growing so quickly and you aren't. Totally feel that myself right now. But when you are able to persevere through those things, great is your reward in the kingdom of heaven. And I want you to look at what's going on in the world, not as a sign of desperation or misery, but as a sign of hope, because the more stuff like this happens, the closer we are to Jesus Christ coming back and truth reigning supreme again in a truthless world. All right, Missy, with the cone of shame, can you say goodbye to the people? Oh my God. It's so sad. Please say a prayer for my sweet, sweet puppy. Before you go, hit that follow or subscribe button on whatever platform you are watching on right now. And I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. Don't forget to go follow Ian Haworth. I hate that the second half of our conversation got corrupted with the audio file. Oh, it's going to make me so mad. But we're going to have Ian back on with some other folks to talk about independent content creation and why that matters in a world of very powerful media companies very, very soon.